in terms of the process of how did you go from a student to starting your own ideas or like trying to manifest your own ideas? Could you tell us a little bit about that
Uh,
process?
yeah, that's I mean, I'm still figuring out what it means to be figuring out that process. Um, so I guess like so one of the great things about being in academia, um, there are a lot of benefits and a lot of drawbacks. Like after you've worked for a while and you've just kind of seen the demands on your time for just producing things, um, all of a sudden you get to go to this place where all you need to do is learn, right? And I don't know, for a nerd like me, that's like a dream. I want to spend my free time like reading a book, right, or just exploring the the context that I'm in. Not to mix up environment with all the other uses of the term, but yeah, there's like an intrinsic curiosity that I like to feed, and so being in school like nurtured that for a while. At one point, it becomes mundane again because things just become normalized. Um, but I think in that kind of a place, you just start naturally thinking of the potential behind the different things that you're learning, right? The possibilities that can exist there. And I think that's part of the excitement of learning. It's like when you're learning calculus, I mean, there's a beauty of the system in and of itself, and that's a nice thing to admire and to really appreciate and to perform and see play out. But at the same time, the question of like, okay, well, what can this tell me about aspects of the world start to become like really playful, and that's there are so many things that can happen, and then you start going down a path and you reach a dead end, or it's like, what, this actually isn't as interesting as I thought, and then you peel back and then you look at something else. um, and I think with this thing here, it's when I stepped into architecture, like from high school, right? I went to RISD knowing RISD's Rhode Island School of Design. When I went to RISD knowing that I wanted to do architecture, um, I walked through New York and I remember thinking that cities are a blemish on the face of the earth. Um, and I don't mean that in like we need to get rid of them. I think cities are like one of the ultimate manifestations of humanity. It's an amazing thing that we have. But given how many of us there are and how big we're making these places, um, we need to build these places for more than one species, right? We need to make it a part of the ecosystem as opposed to separate from it. And so that idea, I think, has always been there. So once that kind of was reintroduced through my mechanical engineering education and my interest in certain life support systems for space, um, there are ways of supporting life in space that, for the most part, everything that we've done up until this point has been through physical chemical systems, and there are some people that are starting to look at integrating biological systems. That just kind of like set off that thing from high school. I just started looking into that more. I really like playing with the Arduino. Arduino is like a little programmable microprocessor, um, and and so I thought, what a fun little project. I'll make like a little tube of algae, attach a few sensors on it, and see what it does to the environment. And that just kind of kept feeding itself. I talked about it with a few friends. They were interested in it. They hopped on. I talked about it with faculty. They said it would be a good capstone project, so I made it into a capstone that gave it some funding. And, eventually, it was like, you know what? So I think a number of us that were working on the project already had some kind of entrepreneurial inclinations, and we were like, it would be great if we were able to make this thing into some kind of a commercializable vision, but it's difficult to make things for space right now. The threshold for entry is really high. Even though it's getting lower, it's still very, very high. And there's no market at that. So even if we were able to have all the funds necessary to send our experiments into space, no one's going to use them until we start sending more people into space. So why not find some kind of terrestrial version of it? And so we was like, oh wow, supporting life in space and sustainability on Earth are actually really similar. Um, a lot of overlap there, and I think that that's an important takeaway that a lot of people will overlook. Like the push for spacefaringness does not necessarily mean, and often is the opposite of pushing away from the Earth. A lot of things that, because it's so hard to live out there, it'll expedite technologies that make it necessary for us to correct some of the wrong that we've done here.
Yeah, I see that for sure.
Mm.